What is up, everybody? This is Julian with the Arcane Lighthouse. Today I want to show off my blingiest deck that I have. This is the Macar the Gold Curse deck. Everything about this deck is... It is a little bit degenerate. I actually don't play it that often because it is so degenerate and people hate fighting it.
I hate you.
It is definitely one of the kinds of decks that kind of combo out. You've got your gold case, you got your gold sleeves. You can't run these in any other sleeves. These are Dragon Shield Gold. I haven't had the pleasure of purchasing a Dragon Shield Matte Gold yet, but I'm thinking I'm gonna get a set just to try it out because I love those matte sleeves. But anyway, gold deck box. It's a must. It's a staple for this deck. So so of course it's a mono black deck. And we have Macar as the commander. This is basically going to be your opponent's faces. It's actually going to be your face too when you play this deck, because you're just like, what is my life? That's basically what's going to happen. So for those who don't know, Macar is a 2 black and 2 mana for a 2/3 creature, and he has an inspired ability, which is inspired whenever they become untapped, something happens. So for Macar specifically, whenever Macar becomes untapped, you may exile target creature. If you do, put a colorless artifact token named Gold onto the battlefield, and it has sacrificed this artifact and would add 1 mana of any color mana pool. So obviously we're only going to be adding black in this deck, but the whole point is that we're basically touching everyone's stuff and turning it into statues. And then using those artifacts, we can essentially fuel our it's going to either be mana that we make out of the gold, which is very rare. Most of the time we're going to be sacrificing the gold to different effects. So it is a little bit degenerate. We don't actually always pull out this commander, and it is a little bit similar to my last deck profile, which was brass, in the sense that we're making artifact tokens yet again, but this is a very different playstyle. So let's get right into it. So Macar himself, you're not actually going to be casting a lot of the times. You're only going to be casting him when either it's very early and you have nothing else to cast, or you can't see any sort of... and if people are open on the board, you can attack into people, and when it comes to your turn again, you untap him, exile something. So when it's safe to attack, you can attack with him. That's always an option. But we have many effects to basically untap him and to essentially wipe the board and make a bunch of artifact tokens and do some abusive stuff with that. So it's a really cool deck. So that's basically the commander, and I'll go in a little bit more about the combos. There's all sorts of combos in this deck. I can't even remember them all, and I don't play the deck often enough to just recall off the top of my head everything, but I'll do my best to kind of keep track of everything that's going on. In Assassin, we have the Royal Assassin, royal being royal to the king. An Assassin is a king's most trusted courier, as we all know. And he has a tap ability to destroy target tapped creature. In a pinch, he's basically like a mini Macar, but we don't get the gold token. He's obviously worse in every way, but if Macar becomes too expensive because people keep removing him, he's always an option. And we have, we can use the untap abilities to abuse him as well. But basically a baby Macar, just very much a baby. He doesn't have nearly the utility that Macar does. So next is our Macar enablers. We have here Paradise Mantle. You equip it's a 0 cost to bring out. You equip 2 Macar for 1, and then you can tap him to add mana of any color, which is going to be black. So Macar basically becomes a mana dork, and he turns something into a statue, which adds yet more mana. This is a really good card. We also have Smuggler's Copter, which is a 2 flying. You should know this if you've played Kaladesh Standard. It got banned, I believe. So it's 3/3 flyer, and it has a crew of 1. So you can crew Macar into this, which means you tap him down to attack or block with this creature. And whenever this attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So we're cycling through our deck, and we're tapping down Macar, which is just stupid. I'm going to keep saying that word because this deck is basically just stupid. Honor Worn Chokku is actually an interesting card. I never would have guessed I would have ever used this, really. But so it's a 3-drop artifact to bring out. You can tap to add 1 to your mana pool, and you can tap an untapped legendary, specifically legendary creature you control, to untap this. So this is always going to add you 2 mana, basically, if you have Macar out. And then when you untap him, either through an effect or your turn, you're going to exile something. So this is just a really good card. It's a good ramp spell. And then finally we have Umbral Mantle for 3. So a Crypt creature you pay 3 and untap, it gets +2/+2. So a lot of times there's a lot of ways to make infinite mana in this deck, and you can either go infinite with Macar, make him an infinite, and exile the entire board at the same time. It's just a really good card. But the untap is mainly what we're looking for. And there's actually other untap abilities in this deck. These are just the ones that specifically used to tap and untap him. But there's a lot more than that. So next we have kind of our ramp spells / mana reducers. So these are a couple of the mana reducing cards. So Foundry Inspector will reduce your artifacts by 1 more, so there'll be 1 less to cast. And then Cloud Key, we're pretty much going to always select artifact. If you don't know what this does, you can actually choose artifact, creature, enchantment, instant, or sorcery. And then your spells of those type cost 1 less to play, but we're always going to choose artifact in this regard. Next we have the Mana Crypt. So the reason we're running a lot of I'm sorry, the Mana Crypt here is just a shitty $100 version, but I'm trying to get the Invention, of course, from Macar, since it's the most Bling that deck. But so Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Soul Ring. We also have Basalt Monolith, but I've put that later down the list for a specific reason. But we essentially have ways to untap these consistently and just generate, if not infinite, a near infinite amount of mana. And so these are kind of our early drops to get our engine going quickly as possible. We have Inspiring Sentry, just like in the Pirates deck. I find that this card is not as effective, but it's still very effective in this deck because, of course, we're running non-artifact spells, and this gives them all Improvise. So Improvise is very strong in this deck because we're generating so many artifact tokens or whatever tokens besides Macar, so other stuff here also makes artifact tokens. Next we have Magus the Coffers. This guy adds swamp to a mana pool for each swamp that we control, so it's basically Cabal Coffers on the creature. Then we have Cryptghast, who doubles our swamps. So whenever swamps tap for mana, you add more of that to your mana pool. We have the Metalworker. This is actually out of order. These are the mana doublers here. Metalworker, you can tap them to reveal any number of artifact cards in your hand. Add 2 mana to your mana pool for each revealed this way. It's just a really good card. It'll basically dump your hand onto the battlefield. Then we have our mana doublers, Cryptghast, doubles your swamps. Extra Planet Lens is going to double your swamps as well. It's actually going to double everyone's swamps, and you have to exile one of your own swamps. That's the downside, but the upside is only a 3 cost. Then we have the Gauntlet of Power, Inventions. This gives our black creatures actually +1/+1, and then whatever. This is also the same case with Extra Planet Lens. Whenever anyone taps a basic land for black, they also get double black. So that's the downside of that. However, Cage Sun does not give that benefit to our opponents. It does cost 1 more though, but it also doubles our black mana production, and only for us. And then finally we have our Mana Quadrupler, which is Liliana of the Dark Realms. A lot of times you're going to be +1ing her because we're actually only running 28 swamps in the deck. So she actually helps get those swamps out because we try to run as few lands as possible without mana screwing ourselves. So the +1 is super helpful here. Her -3 can be used to give a creature -X/-X, where X number of swamps you control. That's kind of a pinch move in this scenario where you just have to remove something. And then her -6 is exactly what we're trying to go for. We actually want to kill her. Or we don't want to, obviously we wouldn't want to kill her, but if we hit 6, we need to activate this right away because it gives us quadruple swamps. Because our swamps would get black, 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 black. Next we go into this is the kind of generic artifacts pile here, just generally helpful to the deck. So first off we have Torpor Orb. This isn't specifically helpful to our deck, but it hurts so many opponents that this card is probably going to just stay in for the sake of stopping our opponent's ETB abilities. And if we don't need it anymore, we can sack it to our many sack outlets in the deck. Next we have Shimmer Mirror. This is a flash, and it gives all of our other artifacts flash. Just really helpful. We don't run Vidalcan Orb because we have this guy. There's no reason to run Vidalcan Orrery. Static Orb, it is a 3, so if you see this card, you're already like, oh god, he runs a Static Orb, but the reason why we can actually really abuse this is because, so what it says is as long as Static Orb is untapped, players can't untap more than 2 permanents during their untap step. The reason why we run this is because we have ways to basically tap this down before it becomes our turn. So we untap everything that we own, Meanwhile, everyone's getting hit with a static orb. So how that works is we'll either have Clock of Omens or something like Icy Manipulator, and we'll get to that. Basically tap this down before it's our turn. So when we untap everything because this is tapped down. And now that this is untapped, then when you pass the turn, it's untapped, and this person, they can only untap 2 things. This person can only untap 2 things. That person can only untap 2 things. And you tap everything down. You tap this down again before it's your turn. You untap with everything. So you'll basically win the game if you have a way to abuse this. But you don't want to play it really if you don't have a way to abuse that that trapping trigger, because everyone's going to go for you and you're also kind of screwed. But it can help sometimes since most of your lands are also going to generate more mana than everyone else's. Staff of Domination is a really strong card.
That's what I mentioned.
So, which I do apologize for only having the $30 version of the card. I need to get the $100 whatever version because it's Macar. So the fact that this untaps itself is crazy. You can actually tap Macar with it. You can untap Macar with it. If we generate infinite mana, this will basically draw us our deck or gain us an infinite life, tap and untap infinitely. This is a stupid broken card, and it really does deserve an invention slot. Next we have Icy Manipulator. I've described this already in brief. You can actually tap Macar with it. If we don't have a way to attack him into someone or anything, it can be used in that method, but most of the time we're going to be tapping him with it, and occasionally we'll be we can use it to basically tap down everyone's lands if we get the right board setup, because we can, our other spells like Paradox Engine and stuff will basically keep untapping this, and we can kind of abuse its ability. Blink Matheran is actually another kind of a sleeper card. Obviously, everyone's going to benefit from Blink Moth because it reads at the beginning of each player's pre-combat main phase. If this is untapped, that player adds close to their mana pool for each artifact they control. So obviously, we're going to be controlling more artifacts than a lot of other players, so we're going to be benefiting most from it, but some people will be okay with it. We can actually abuse this by doing the same thing where we tap this down before it's someone else's turn in this case. So before we end our turn, we tap it down, and then it's everyone else's turn. They don't get the benefit, and it comes to our turn. And it untaps, of course, and then we get the benefit of it. So that can also be abused with that. Paradox Engine is one of the best cards in the deck. When they print, I don't know what they were thinking when they printed this card. This is just amazing. Whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents you control. We run Mana Rocks. We can untap Macar continuously. Trading Grounds is, or Trading Post is one of those cards where we can tap, draw cards. So if we draw an artifact, or any spell really, we can tap it, draw a card, play a spell, untap all of our stuff. We have all sorts of things that tap down, and then basically this just untaps everything to just start the process anew, and it just keeps going. This could sometimes actually end up playing a lot of your deck out by itself, because we're generating so much mana and we're just playing things virtually for free. And I know it's a little bit hard unless I have scenarios laid out and everything, and I'm probably going to make an article about it. I'm still working on Brass since we released a video, and so kind of got a little bit of catching up to do, but yeah, this is a really good card. Mycosynth Golem, this is the affinity for artifacts golem, so he costs 1 less for each artifact we control. A lot of times it's going to be like 2 or less. And he also gives other artifact creature spells affinity for artifacts, meaning now basically all of your artifact creatures are free. He's just really good. Next we have Metal Colossus. He costs 1 X less, where X is the total convert mana cost of non-creature artifacts you control. We control a bunch of gold tokens. We control a lot of non-creature artifacts in general, so a lot of times you're actually playing him for free. So a free 10/10, like I can't complain about that. This may come out, but just the power level of it is I enjoy. And you can sacrifice 2 artifacts to return him from your graveyard to your hand. Then you can play him for free probably again. So he's just a constant threat out on the battlefield. Finally, we have the Ballista Colossus, because we're running an artifact deck. He's going to be cheaper. We're going to have a lot of ways to generate near infinite or infinite mana. And who wouldn't play a converted mana cost 0 Ballista Colossus? That's just crazy. Trample Infect, you know what he does. He's degenerate. Then we have kind of our combo section of artifacts. Like I said, I don't play this deck enough to remember everything because this deck gets just out of hand, out of control, and stupid. But liquid metal coatings actually, this used to be a silver skin armor, but I didn't like the equip costs. And we have ways to untap this and stuff and make things turn into artifacts. So this you can tap to make target permanent become an artifact. One of the main targets is actually Macar, because we can use something like Clock of Omens and tap 2 untapped artifacts, including Macar, when we target him with this to make him an artifact until end of turn. And then you can untap target artifact, which is, again, Macar, because he's been affected by this. And then we're going to exile something, we can tap 2 things again. And so when we make the gold token, that's an artifact that we get out. So then we tap the gold and tap Macar again because he's an artifact, remember, to untap Macar again and then exile something else. And it's just an endless chain. You wipe the board with these 2 cards. Same with Mycosynth Lattice, which I'll get to. There's also other utilities with this. Just a very interesting and good card in this deck. And then Clock of Omens. This is one of the most busted cards in the deck. Not even just the Macar Infinite Gold Loop, but there's just other things that you can do. There's a lot of cards that require tapping down to activate, and then you can tap down 2 useless gold tokens to just keep untapping important artifacts. So it's really good in that regard. You can do some infinite loops. You can actually you can untap stuff like Basalt Monolith and Mana Vault instead of paying the actual cost for them and stuff. Really strong utility card. Next we have Nev's Disc. This is pretty much a board wipe because we're running mono black. We don't always have methods of getting rid of enchantments, like, at all, or artifacts, really, to say the least. But specifically that combos with Mycosynth Lattice and Darksteel Forge. Yes, we were running the Degenerate combo. But, so the reason why we run... So if you don't know what this combo does, I'm sorry for showing you this. So this gives all of your artifacts indestructible. Very strong enabler card. Mycosynth Lattice, all permanents on the battlefield for everybody are artifacts in addition to their other types. All cards that aren't in play, spells, and permanents are colorless, and players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. So, yeah, this turns everything into artifacts, including Macar, which we wouldn't need the liquid metal coating for anymore. But when everything's an artifact, things get a lot easier because you have stuff like Clock of Omens that like artifacts. You have other things like that care about how many artifacts you have, like Mycosynth Golem. It just combos with a lot of things. And then Nev's Disc, of course, when everything's an artifact, including their lands, you can pay 1 and tap this to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Every permanent that everyone else controls is an artifact, and it'll kill everything on the board except your own stuff because you have Darksteel Forge out. So you probably already know the combo. It's super degenerate. But next we have Summoning Station. There is a combo with this. Whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from play, you may untap Summoning Station. This can get out a bunch of little 2/2 pinchers. I believe there's a combo with this. I just cannot remember for the life of me what it was, but it's still a pretty good card. Basalt Monolith is a 3, of course, people always know this as the Rings of Brighthearth card, but we don't actually run rings because there's not enough targets in the deck for rings. So this actually combos with specifically Voltic Construct and Karn. So you can actually target with Voltic Construct, Basalt Monolith, or with Karn. So you use Karn to pay 1, target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its convert mana cost until end of turn. This becomes a 3/3 creature, and then you can pay 2 to untap target artifact creature, which Basalt Monolith is now a creature, and then you can basically tap, add 3, use 2 of that 3 to untap him, and you've got an infinite mana combo going. This is just one of the ways to do it. You can also do it with, of course, Mana Vault and stuff. So these 2 are specifically used for those infinite combo chains and such. But outside of that, there's not really much that these 2 do, but it's strong enough to actually include them. So that's why they're in here. Of course, we got the Flare Husk and Salvaging Station combo. With this, you can tap this to return target non-creature artifact card with convert mana cost 1 or less from your graveyard to play. you bring back the Flare Husk with this thing. You can also bring back, of course, your mana rocks that may have gotten board wiped or such, and it's got that side utility. But so whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, you may untap this. So essentially, you can go infinite by sacrificing Flare Husk to some sacrifice outlet in the deck, and then because it creates a germ token, when you sacrifice Flare Husk, the germ is a 0/0, and then the germ dies. So when a creature is put in a graveyard from play, you untap the salvaging station. So you keep bringing back the Flare Husk infinitely. You can sacrifice it to something. So you can do something like Clan Ironworks and make infinite mana by just continuously pitching this. So that's why these are in here. And that's pretty much it for kind of our specific combo enablers. These cards are basically specifically used for combos. But of course they have some outside utility, but mostly they're combo usage exclusively. Next we go into kind of our realm of sacrificing and stuff. So these are cards that basically want to sacrifice things or want to be sacrificed. So let's start with the Sly Requisitioner. This is basically the Pied Piper of artifacts. It has improvise, so it costs 1 less for each artifact we have in play that we tap down to pay for its cost. So almost all the time it's going to be 1 black. And the Requisitioner, basically whenever a non-token artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we create a 1/1 color servo artifact creature token, which we will use to, sacrifice any to any effects and stuff. So basically it makes our sacrificing kind of double down because we're getting twice as much out of it. Next we have Mirror Retriever. When Mirror Retriever goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, we return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Super useful. It basically gives us some more value out of pitching stuff through different effects. Next we have a few targets that want to be basically sacrificed. We have some common cards actually. Ichor Wellspring. When Ichor Wellspring enters the battlefield or is put in a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. This is one of the best ones out of the 3 here that are pretty much the same thing. This is also another 2-drop servo schematic. When this enters or goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 servo, which we can also use to sacrifice. And then the worst one I would say is the Wellspring. It's also a 2-drop. When this enters or is put in a graveyard, we search out for land, and then we reveal it and then put it into our hand, not the battlefield. If it hit the battlefield, that would be amazing, but hand is not bad. But, it's a basic land, so it's even worse, but, there's a little bit of value. And then we've got Solemn Simulacrum, which, of course, it does. When it enters, we search for a swamp, and then when it dies, we draw a card. And then there's ways to bring these back, so then, we can keep recycling over and over. And then finally we have Spine of Ishsa, which, when it enters, we destroy target permanent. This has saved my butt so many times, and a lot of times it's not going to cost 7. A lot of times it'll be 6 or so, but you've got ways to. Most of the time we're going to tap like 3 swamps to get it out. So whenever this is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to our hand. So we can keep bringing it back out to destroy permanents and stuff. And then we have the Mirror Battlesphere. Basically, we just want the tokens, the Mirror tokens out of this to sacrifice with. And then we have our actual sack outlets. Herald of Anguish is also an improvise, so we're going to be paying just 2 black for it a lot of times. It's a flying 5/5. At the beginning of our end step, each opponent discards a card. This is like negative card advantage for all of our opponents. So we come out ahead just by, turn after turn, they're getting less and less cards. And then in a pinch, we can pay 1 black and 1 and sacrifice an artifact, give target creature -2/-2. We can basically, if we somehow lose our Macar, we have tons of gold tokens, or even like any of these guys that want to be sacrificed, we can even stack that trigger to basically kill any creature that we want. So that's really cool. Then we have the Scrap Trawler, which is a 3 for 3/2. Whenever Scrap Trawler or another artifact we control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to our hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser convert mana cost. This is the same thing as kind of like a Mirror Retriever, except a lot of times we don't actually want to target this. We want to target other artifacts, and then we just get value out of it. I mean, it's less and less convert mana cost, but we're still getting physical value in that we're getting a card each time we pitch a card. So this is actually really good. Clan Ironworks. I cannot tell you how good this card is. So it's a sack outlet for artifacts. We can add 2 to our mana pool. So even our gold token, just by itself, our gold tokens double in mana. So you can either sacrifice it for 1 black or 2 colorless, which is already good. And then I already mentioned it before, you can also combo this with other things, make infinite mana and such with like Flare Husk and stuff. So this is just a really good card to have. Next we have Aetherworks Marvel. Whenever a permanent you control is put into a graveyard, you get an energy counter. This is our only example of energy counters in this deck. I tried tinkering with like Gonti's like Ether Heart or something. It was crap. So this is our only energy thing. But the cool thing is it's any permanent, so even tokens count. And we can just pitch, like if like we wouldn't do this, but like pitch 6 gold tokens and just activate this. Like I don't know, I might actually do that, because we're basically anytime anything's put in a graveyard, especially gold, just so easy to get in the graveyard, we can pay 6 energy tokens, look at the top 6 cards of your library. I mean, if you play standard, you know how degenerate this card is. So look at the top 6, you may cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Really good with the gold tokens, but it's also good with other stuff that we want to sacrifice. I put Trading Post in this pile instead of like my other pile here with the draw cards, because most of the time we're going to be paying 1 to sacrifice an artifact, which is gold, to draw a card. In the example with the other video with Pirates, it was the treasure tokens, but this is just as good because we're sacrificing gold tokens. The cool thing is we can also pay 1 to sacrifice a creature, which could be like something like a Servo, to return target artifact card from my graveyard to your hand, which the Pirates don't do as well because they don't have a lot of artifacts. They have a lot of ways to generate artifact tokens. We actually do run a lot of artifacts that will go to the graveyard, so we can actually viably use that. Next we have the Kadal the Forge Master. This guy is really cool. He is a 3/5 for 5. You tap him and sacrifice 3 artifacts, search your library for any artifact card, and put it onto the battlefield. Then you shuffle the library. So you just pitch 3 gold, get a Darksteel Forge out of it. Like, what the fraggle? That's just amazing. Or even like a bite. So like anything. Like you could have like 2 cards and like, oh crap, I need that 3rd card really bad. Sacrifice 3 gold. You got it. It's like turn after turn. He's just so good. Next we have kind of our generic draw spells. Phyrexian Arena, of course, we're in black. Extra card every turn. Of course, mono black Necropotence. If you don't run this, you're I don't even want to say it. But you basically skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile it because you're not going to, yeah, whatever. And then you pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library, face down, and then at the end of the turn you put all those cards into your hand. So it's just an amazing card. We're running mono black. Next we have Greed. It's very appropriate for this deck. I just love the art of this. And then what is a sliver of 1 soul compared to unimaginable wealth? We're soulless. We're running masterpiece cards. We don't care about life at all. So what is a sliver of 1 soul worth? So we pay black and 2 life to draw a card. It's simple enough. It's one of our draw engines. This is actually super important. It may not seem like it, but a lot of times we'll just dump our hand on the board. We have nothing to play. This basically negates that. If you have Paradox Engine out, you can basically keep the engine going and keep playing stuff, and it's just amazing. This is a recent inclusion, Twilight Prophet. I have not actually play tested this yet, but we're running a black deck, and I needed more draw in this deck, and this is actually one of the few things that actually gain us life in the deck. So yeah, it's an extra card per turn, and then we gain a little bit of life. Everyone else loses a little bit of life. It's perfect for the deck. So far, I think so. I don't know for sure yet. But next we have Marionette Master. I also run this in Pirates. There's actually a lot of similarities with this in Pirates in the artifact sense of things, because this card will basically, if we amass enough gold, this will win us the game. Or even any other kind of artifact, we can just dump them all and then win the game. We make opponents lose life equal to the power of her whenever an artifact goes to the graveyard. So this is actually also, I mentioned in the other video, this is also an underplayed card. Really strong. It's still at like 30 cents or something. So if you run any kind of artifact deck, you pretty much want it. Our other one condition is Exsanguinate. So with all the ways of generating infinite mana, this will basically just kill everyone at the table for, you just pay mana to kill everyone. That's all this card does. We don't even care about the life gain so much. I mean, we can use it in a pinch if we're trying not to die. But I mean, chances are if you're dedicating an entire turn to using that, you're probably going to die anyway because they have a better board state than you, but whatever. So Walking Ballista, It's an X and X, but of course if we have infinite mana, this guy's going to be an infinite, and then we can remove a +1/+1 counter from him to deal 1 damage, so we can deal infinite damage to this guy. Another win condition card. Next we have our tutors. Planner Bridge is one of our tutors. You pay 6 mana to bring it out. It does nothing that turn unless you can pay the 8 right away, which you tap it, search your library for a permanent card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. This card is really good. It gets our combo pieces going. It just accelerates your game very quickly. It's just a really good card. They released this basically like right after Paradox Engine or like the same set. I don't remember, but I was baffled. I'm like, why are you doing this to me? Then Beseech the Queen. We're going to be paying only 3 black for this. Search our library for a card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control. Reveal that and then put it in your hand. So it's just a tutor card. We do need to run tutors because we need combo pieces. I'm not running Demonic or anything if you've noticed, because this is our last one, Diabolic Revelation. We generate so much mana that we can basically search for every single combo piece that we have and then just win the game from there. So if you don't know what it does, search your library for up to X cards and put them in your hand. If you look there, you just pay 5 and then X. And we generate enough mana that it's a really expensive cost, but we generate so much mana that that's basically nothing. Next is our removal. We have only 1 real single target removal because Macar does most of the work for us. That and his Trusty Assassin. So we can destroy target creature or Planeswalker. Most of the time we're going for Planeswalkers because they're actually kind of hard to deal with sometimes in this deck. We don't have a lot of brute force, so this will get rid of troublesome, pesky Planeswalkers. Next we have Toxic Deluge. We're running black. I mean, any deck that runs black pretty much will want to play this. As an additional cost to play it, we pay X life, and then all creatures get -X until end of turn. And then finally we have Mutilate, which is a 4-drop. All creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn for each swamp we control. We run only swamps, so of course. So that's basically it for all the non-land spells. And then next is our lands. We run Arcane Lighthouse because we're the Arcane Lighthouse. And but more so than that, Macar needs to be able to target things. So Arcane Lighthouse lets us do that. I've had games where people were actually angry that I had the Arcane Lighthouse because I would just exile their stuff, even though they had boots and griefs and stuff, and they rage quit. I mean, there's so much salt, like it was just bleeding out of them. Like
more salt than the Dead Sea.
There's more salt than the freaking Dead Sea in that room. Oh my god. And then the Reliquary Tower, because it's commander. Then we have Inventor's Fair. So at the beginning of our upkeep, if we control 3 or more artifacts, we gain 1 life, which we don't really care about because we can tap this to add colors or mana pool, whatever. But the big thing here is you can pay 4 and tap it to sacrifice this card, search our library for an artifact card, reveal it, and put it into our hand, and then shuffle library, blah, blah, blah. But we can only activate it if we have Metalcraft, which is controlling 3 or more artifacts. But this is a really good card. It's also another tutor, essentially. Buried Ruin. Either add generic mana or pay 2 and sacrifice this to return an artifact from our graveyard to your hand. If you really need to get that game-breaking artifact that someone removed, this will do it for you. And then finally we have the Fractious Core. We can pay 1 to add 1 to our mana pool, tap to add 1 to our mana pool, or pay 1 and tap it to sacrifice an artifact, and we gain 1 life. That's just for getting a little bit of benefit out of something happening where someone removes artifacts or an artifact we have. We at least get something out of it. That's really all it is. And then finally we have 28 swamps. It seems pretty low to run only 33 lands, but of course we're in monocolor. We have all these mana doublers. I think 28 is a good number. It was at 29, but even 29 felt cloggy because we don't actually want to hit our land drops a lot when we use stuff like Trading Post, because we have, like, when you develop your board, you end up finding ways to just keep untapping all your stuff and just going through your deck and running through your deck. And the only way to keep that going is to keep playing non-lands, keep casting spells. So when we hit our land drops, it actually really slows us down. And if you hit 2 in a row, most of the time your combo ends. So we want to keep the land hits as little as possible while still not bricking. So it's a very careful balance. I'm trying 28 now. It may even go down to 27. I don't know yet. But so yeah, that's really the deck. Hope you enjoyed it. I know I do apologize for not having the absolute best copies of the cards in a blingy deck such as this. I do need to get a Staff of Dom. I need to get a Mana Crypt. $100 is just not enough for that card. So yeah, please let me know if there's anything that you would suggest. I'm basically looking for any kind of degenerate art. I use this exclusively to deal with people that have the degenerate decks. They bring like these thousands of dollars worth of cards, and then they're like, oh, I don't combo out, but then they end up comboing out, and they basically lie. And then I pull this guy out, and then he just pretty much wins the game, and he pisses people off because his combos, when you start playing the combos, you know exactly what's happening. It's just the actual process of tapping things down and carrying through the actions takes so long, and there's so many steps to them that people will get bored. That's why I don't play this deck with my friends. I play this deck against people that I hate. And I don't play with people that I hate very often. So that's why I don't really play this deck. But yeah, there's nothing more annoying than this guy who looks like he's just bored out of his mind, like just assembling his Rube Goldberg engine and winning the game out of nowhere, just this massive machine of artifacts, and he's just bored sitting there, and everyone else at the table is bored, and you're just going to win the game, basically. So, yeah, no, but it's a really fun deck to play against people you hate, and that's exactly why I don't really play it too often. So that's why I'm not recalling all the combos and stuff. The last time I played it was a while ago, and even then that was like the first time in months. So it's probably a bad time for me to review if I haven't been playing it. But I hope that you can come up with some combos if you build this deck. It is probably one of my more expensive decks just because I'm running the inventions. But if there's any combos that I've missed, if there's any combos you can think of that I would that could use this deck, I would really greatly appreciate it. Because artifacts are probably the most degenerate archetype in the game because they basically jerk each other off. Like, oh, artifacts, you're an artifact too, yeah, bro, I'm an artifact, and like just jerk each other off basically the whole time. It's basically like they just get swifty with each other all the time. So, yeah, screw Brea. I don't even need 4 colors. I'm running 1 color, and it's just an amazing artifact deck. So, yeah. Let me know in the comments anything you can think of. Let me know what you think. If you like it, drop a like, drop a subscribe if you want to see more deck profiles because we're coming out with more. And we will see you next time.